Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Euro Trade. Hopefully, everybody had a great weekend. This morning in my garden, we had our neighbor telling us that a peacock from the farm out the back decided to make its way into our part of the farm, and yeah, so we were worried that dogs are gonna go crazy. So yeah, life in the countryside, a little bit different from what I'm usually used to. All right, let's have a look at some of the big time frame overviews to prepare for the week. One thing you're not supposed to be doing is to immediately, sit down Monday morning or Asia open and start clicking buttons. So there's some critical thinking that should take place first and an overview of bigger time frames. So I'm going to start with copper since that's something that I like to focus on for a slightly later part of London. And also I do trade DAX, but obviously we still don't have DAX just yet. I can go over it just for, people who maybe traded somewhere else. And we're going to be waiting for DAX to arrive at some point. But for now, let's have a look at that monthly chart of copper. So I'm going to focus on that. And then we're going to go through everything. Okay, so monthly chart. Still kind of making higher move here above the previous all-time highs. We're still not back below that line that I designated for a potential for sell-off and then a reversal. If we do manage to get below 551 by the end of this month, that wick would be, I would say, significant enough to call a sell-off for August. But for now, this is not really telling me all that much. It's just saying that it's gone into a breakout, but I still have my little pointer here where I'm saying basically weekly new all-time high, sell wick and reverse. So we're still watching, we're still observing there. That doesn't mean we won't have some lower time frame setups cropping up, because I do trade copper every single day almost. Right, weekly chart. So was this Friday? It was. Okay, so Friday ended up as a rather pathetic little doji. So we had a pretty quiet week. Kept chopping in between 555 and sort of 547. But now it seems to be trying, it's kind of trying to go higher. It's not causing too much trouble there, because I wouldn't say that this move up is too screamy to the upside, otherwise the candle will be bigger. So I think we're starting off the week slightly quieter on copper. That could be a hallmark of July. It doesn't mean that, it's not a new uptrend, but it's certainly very muted, I would say. And we had the CPI last week, so that should have brought a bigger movement if the big boys are around. But somehow I'm suspecting that most people are away on vacations, holidays. Bruno's saying nice hair. Yeah, I decided to go back to a little bit of pink. The only reason why I went blonde was because it washed out my red and black during COVID, and then I got sick. So yeah, but yeah, now I'm thinking be a little bit more whimsical, and I actually feel more like me, if I'm gonna be honest. But yeah, hopefully you like the pink. I don't know whether this camera, because the camera, we have a filter on it, so it's actually more pink in real life. All right, daily chart. This is a reaccumulation that I'm seeing here. So reaccumulation, bullish engulfing, a little bit of follow through there. But again, candles are so small. Yeah, this is definitely more summertime trading. So not much to glean from that. Going down to a 4-hour chart and looking at some of the intraday measures. So where's Globex VWAP? how are we tracking higher? I would say that this is a bit of a stair step higher, so it's not just like all green candles up and up. So there's a fair amount of stutter going on. So it goes up, then kind of can't decide, then goes up, then tries to sell off, then stutter, and then it goes back up again. So again, I wouldn't be comfortable going long at this area. If I'm going to go long, I want to see a bit of a decent pullback to the downside, and then maybe we can find a setup to go along with the trend. But the way I'm seeing this, I think both sides of the picture are still in force for this July, second part of July. Right, so where are we in relation to the profile and value areas and all that good stuff? So when it comes to the London value high sitting at 559.10. So that's all the way down here. We opened, or it opened, above value. By how much? Let's measure that. Well, it opened just sub 1%, so 0.8% of value. That tells me that there is a chance that we go and test the value high. When it comes to the Friday NYMEX value high, it's a little bit higher, and that is the main session for this particular product. That's sitting at around 516.90. So we'll see where we open up, but if it opens above the high of Globex, which is located at 566.90 or 566.85, let's say, there is also a chance that we test value. But if it goes any higher than that, we're going to be in a situation where it's opening a little bit too high up in order for us to go, oh yeah, definite mean reversion. The probabilities fade the larger the gap open, so we need to remember that for future reference. Quantitative extremes. So my quantitative extremes are located around 568.40 to the upside. So I'm just going to put that as a marker. And as always, change it to red and change it to a dash line. And then give it a name. When I look at the options volatility, projected volatility or implied volatility, that's all the way up at 574. I'm not sure that that's that realistic without some sort of a catalyst today. If we have a catalyst, then anything's possible, right? We've seen Trump come out with news of copper tariffs of 50%, and then copper went for 1,863 ticks in mere seconds. So again, be vigilant about headline risk. Have financial juice open. It's free. Yeah, it's a little bit delayed, but it's only like a few seconds delay. It's not gonna make that much of a difference. And to the downside, let's find the ADR low. That's located at 555.05, but let's just say 555 because it's and one tick difference doesn't really make much distinction. So okay, ADR low. So those are your kind of projected big levels, big range. Call them extremes of the day, whatever you want. If we overshoot past them and sort of ignore them, a lot of the times you can actually use these ADR highs and ADR lows as a bounce point. So it kind of goes over it, retests it, you could have a continuation trade. And copper, when it gets to behave like its own directional self, probably shouldn't fight it. But at the moment, everything is kind of coming to a bit of a screeching halt. So for my liking, I would probably look for some kind of a fade here. Again, on Mondays, I'm not that keen on doing trades too early, especially not before LME opens, which is at 11:40 my time, and that's roughly a couple of hours from now. And also remember that LME actually closes 10 minutes after the euro close. So there's another sort of pump into the end of LME, on copper in particular. So, some of the times of the day that we have to consider is always going to be related to the exchange open and the exchange settlement. Now, my products typically settle earlier, so just keep that in mind. All right, let's have a look at chat and who's in. Like, how was your weekend? Let me know. What were you people up to? Because I actually went to a pub lunch yesterday. That's pretty relaxing. My husband was driving, so all I needed to do is just sit there and enjoy the countryside views. And we took Mommy and Daddy, which is Leonard and Lisbon, or one of our two dogs. They're the parents to our puppies. We took them with us, so that was a nice sort of double date. All right, Dead Wolf is in the chat. Greg Sticks File, Alex LPA, T3 Metrics, Tom is here. Yarden, Alexander Cranes, Lazy Eyes, saying, yeah, that's an ugly setup. Yeah, I agree. Ladder up, elevator down looking. I would concur. Snipo, good morning, coach. Okay. Good morning, good morning. Alexander saying, hey D, the equity NQES Globex runs more often positive than other. Do you have stats about it by any chance? Not on Globex. So I was never really an Asia trader. I'm more remember I come from the energies, right? My main products for 12 years was mainly crude oil. Now crude oil obviously dried up a bit, so I moved into natural gas and gasoline futures, which are a little bit more liquid, even though they can go pretty quiet sometimes. But there's still more movement than there is in crude oil. So my personal specialty, and the reason why I can call, if you've ever watched Lunchbox Trading, when we're talking about crude oil, why I can call out how crude oil is going to behave, like literally before it happens, is because I've traded it for so long. But, when it comes to equities, I know DAX and I do know equities for Power Hour, but, not for Globex. Like Globex is something that, to me, it's like a new development, right? When I was learning how to trade like many moons ago, they tried to put me on an equities desk, but here's the problem. ES back then was moving like 12 to 16 ticks per the entire day. Like we're talking 2012, 2013. To me, I couldn't understand why people were trading it. And it was a weird time after the credit crunch. We had the QE program by the Fed, and then over the years they were like tapering, and then more tapering and more tapering over the next sort of several years until QE program was no more. But then throughout all of those like 5 years, NQ had like a 75-point range, and ES had like a 4 and 5 point range for the entire 24 hours. So this idea that, I would have stats on a fairly new development, which is really in the last sort of 2 years, right? We never really used to have Globex moving much. That started happening during the election year. So those are the only stats you can get. Before then, Globex, you look at Asia ranges for NQ, it would move like 18 points. It's like, wow, what a move, right? And then sort of 2023, we started seeing these smoother movements during Asia, with London and then the main session, the RTH session, being a complete mess, right? Complete wicks everywhere, no commitment to anything. And then suddenly you started getting these traders who are like, well, actually, equities move a lot smoother during Asia, let me focus on that. So it's a fairly new development, but you can absolutely look at the last 2 years. I personally don't have stats on that because I don't do Asia, so I don't really have any of my counting algorithms, as I like to call them, that would account for that. I mean, one thing that I would maybe try and do is just visually go back, and I can do that on my proprietary indicators. Obviously I'm not going to do it for the 2 years, but here's what my Blatek indicators can do. So if I switch on the Blatek backtest mode, and I mean I could even switch it on to only show me the Tokyo session, and then you can just visually go through and write things down. It's boring, it's time consuming and boring, but okay, I can't be bothered doing that now. But basically the Tokyo session is the blue lines. So maybe I can just focus on Tokyo. And then if I kind of go backwards, does Tokyo go up? Well, it went up on Friday, Globex. What did it do for Thursday? Sort of went down, then went back up, but it didn't really pick it up until the final sort of couple of hours. But let's say that eventually it did end up, right? So what do we do on Wednesday? Bit of non-committal movement, but right off the open it went up. Then if we go further back, Tokyo definitely went up, but then a huge wick down, then generally up. So now we have like 4 days where Tokyo generally does go up. Monday, I suppose it still went up, but then sold off towards the end of the session. So here's the thing: Mondays do tend to go like the opposite way to the rest of the rest of the week for some strange reason, and Fridays can do the same as well. But that kind of analysis, if you have some kind of a backtest mode and you can have pointers of direction and stuff, this is why I like my proprietary indicators, because I wanted to have that on the chart so I can like visually just go back and see what the hell happened. So it's it looks like it for the last week it definitely went up, apart from Monday. So go back, put it in a spreadsheet, aggregate the data, and then you'll have some stats. Or maybe get in touch with Andre from Edgewonk, sorry, not Edgewonk, Edgeful, and ask him to create a directional stat. Does Globex go up or does it go down? But equities in general, if you look at them over the last 40 years, like much longer than I've been trading for 18 years, they do generally go up. So it makes sense that on most days we're going to be going up, unless it's like a recession or something. So Yarden says, had a great weekend. We had an amazing weather in Hamburg and made lots of street music with friends. Awesome. That sounds amazing. iWorld says, like the new color. Thank you. Took our boy German Shepherd pup to coffee after training class. Wonderful. I used to do that when I was in London. Over here you can't exactly just kind of take the dogs and just walk, because there's not even a footpath. So if I want to take them out, we actually have to go in the car and drive somewhere. But again, we had a double date with 2 of our dogs yesterday, so that was very nice. Siwa says, are you saying copper settles in a couple of hours? No. So copper LME, London Metal Exchange, starts open outcry trading in 2 hours. So that's the beginning of the official trading session. And why does that matter? Because LME is one of the largest metal exchanges in the world still to this day. I thought that they closed it up, but then I looked at it like the other day and it's open again. So they keep kind of closing it, then opening it, then closing it. Yeah, it's a bit weird. Alexander says you're walking Investopedia. Thank you for your point of view. I asked this because Dakota is very successful trading it. Yeah, that's his jam. You know, he was he's a bit younger than me. You know, I am almost 45. He's like 31. So when he was learning how to trade, he was going to college. I didn't really start trading until I was like 27 and already had a music career. So I didn't need to manage my time. And in fact, whenever you were on the road, there was plenty of time where you did nothing. You were just either sitting on a plane or sitting on a tour bus or sitting in vans, in cars, and just traveling somewhere, which is the thing that started to annoy me the older I got. So yeah, you had oodles of time to trade during normal hours, and a lot of my gigs were in and around Europe. So I was based in the UK, so a fair chunk of them were in London and surrounding areas. One of them was up north in Birmingham. There was once a month for gate crashers. And then we used to go, sometimes you would go to Ibiza for about like, I don't know, like a week or so. And then we used to have fairly regular gigs in and around Italy, Switzerland, France, like a whole bunch of countries in and around Europe. So, yeah. What time in EST? All right, so let's convert the LME exchange hours to EST. Oops, okay, savvy time not working. Why does that not work? So London, and then we go to New York. Okay, so let's have a look. Time zone calculator. So here I want 11 a.m. and 40 minutes. Is that AM or PM? So hold on. It's 11:40. Really? This is supposed to be current time. And then if I change this, I used to like Savvy Time, but for some reason their website is down. So I just pulled up a random. Does that change it? 11. Yeah, so this is AM, right? So it's 5 hours difference. 11, 10, 9, 8, 7, 6. Yeah. So 6:40 a.m. Eastern is when the LME exchange begins trading. And then if we go to the COMEX hours, but we want to also put the LME close, that is 16:40. That's 4:40 p.m. over here. And that is 11:40 a.m. Eastern. So those are your times for the LME. And then obviously COMEX then settles at my 6 p.m., which is 1 p.m. Eastern. So make note of those times. That is when usually more volume comes in, and or you can get a fade. So yeah, time zone converters are pretty cool. And you know, I frequently have people who are all over the world, and you know, Bruno is in Thailand. We have Jerome, he's in Lyon in France. Then we have all of the top steppers, they're in and around Chicago, but then Coach Jay is in New York. So it's like, you know, we're always like working in multiple time zones. It gets very confusing. But pretty cool as well, the fact that the technology can connect us in such a way that everybody's in different time zones. And yeah. Metals are OPEX. It's the same. So for metals, the options expiry is exactly the same as equities. So it would be every third Friday of the month. Is it third Friday? I think it's every third Friday. Or is it third Thursday? I'm now confusing it with rollover. Which one is it? Let me have a look. But yeah, wherever the OPEX for equities is, it's literally the same thing. The only difference in other commodities would be options in crude oil, because now they have bi-weekly crude oil option expiries. So every Tuesday and every Thursday, there's a bit of a higher incidence of a potential trend day. So if you have like an obvious sustained auction either side, on Tuesdays and Thursdays, I'm not too keen to go against that. Because of the option expiry, because usually on crude oil it just kind of keeps going. Kieran is converting the times. Thank you, Kieran. A bit too early for that. Right. Okay. So let's move on to something else while we wait for copper to at least maybe extend the initial balance down. Because it's still stuck inside the initial balance, and I'm not that keen on trading anything inside the initial balance. We want those other time frame participants to try and take the price outside of the first hour trading range, and then for me it's always an easier trade. Every time I try and trade inside the initial balance, it's always like, oh god, it's so slow, especially at this time of the day for this product. Apart from DAX. DAX usually has pretty decent movement, but again, it is the summertime, so you know. All right, let's go on to platinum. Now, platinum had a nice sell-off on Friday. And you know how I said Mondays and Fridays can go in the opposite direction to the rest of the trend? We saw that on Friday, right? Hit 1500, which was the core resistance, and don't know whether it was a gamma wall as well, but there were certainly some big calls right up there. And again, we had the option expiry, so naturally it all just kind of started snowballing. So yeah, that's something to take note. And by the way, unwinding moves, like something that just goes completely the opposite the rest of the month, can actually happen towards the end of the month as well, especially in the last day of the month. Don't know how prevalent that is during the summertime. It's probably still there, but a bit muted. So something to keep in mind as we migrate towards the end of July. But it tends to be pretty prevalent, like April, May, like really kind of heavy hitting months when a lot of volume is being traded. Everybody's at their desks. Right now, I kind of feel across the board that all of the big boys are just not around. Platinum's super thin this morning. It's always a thin market anyway, but at least during regular trading hours, there are certain prices where you can find like 15 and 20 contracts. Very difficult to trade size without like some kind of iceberg orders or something. The way I trade platinum, if I want to go in with any size, would be to execute a couple of contracts at one price, then kind of wait until it moves inside a zone or away from it, then another couple, and then another couple, and then you sort of build the position very slowly until you get to your desired bigger position. Not something most of you have to worry about, but that is the idea. Sort of like Dolby style trading, if you've ever seen him do that. It's just that I do something like that manually because I like control over where I'm entering. But he likes limit orders. I despise limit orders, frankly. I like them for like swing trading when you have like a bigger stop loss and you can absorb the intraday whipsaws a lot better because your position is generally smaller in relation to the percentage of the available capital that you're using as a swing trader. And, you know, in that respect, if you're only using like, I don't know, 0.5 or 0.3% on a swing position, your stop loss can be pretty sizable. And then you also don't have the intraday time constraint where you have to fit the stop loss within a particular range in order to get a positive risk reward. So, you know, swing trading versus intraday trading, they're two different problems. And, you know, if you can just hold trades with no time constraint, it does make it a little easier. I wouldn't say it's like, oh, it's easy just to swing trading. It's not, because then you have to be super careful with trade locations. But if you've got that down, yeah, swing trading is can be pretty lucrative, because you don't have to close it at the end of the day. You can carry over positions. You can even catch moves from like Asia and London, even if you're asleep at that time. So it can be pretty lucrative. Sometimes my end of day trades that I usually do towards the final sort of 3 hours of electronic trading, they do go on to continue their story throughout Asia. So, you know, I have carried over a fair amount of them, but I always find the stop losses need to be pretty big to accommodate all of that. Snape the Snack, okay, said, you mentioned music career. Were you a singer, or what instrument? So I was a multi-instrumentalist. I was primarily, so here's the thing, I have a degree in flute, classical flute. Never really used that degree. I was a rock and pop musician. I played saxophone from when I was about 12, but very quickly, because I already played flute, and I had started playing piano when I was 4 years old. But I didn't really like the piano. I didn't find it organic enough, and I like to control the breath and, you know, the amount of force going into it. And, you know, with piano, it's like you can press it harder or you can press it softer, and it's like that's pretty much the end of the story. So to me, I wanted a more connected instrument, if that makes sense. And when I was 9, I also learned how to sing really well. So I was, yes, I did sing, but I've always found instruments a lot more interesting. And then I also picked up the guitar, electric guitar, first time when I was about 13. But because I'm left-handed, and there were only like normie guitars there, it didn't go well. I also have a bit of a scar on my left palm. It was like stupid. I was going to buy some drinks in like 1993, and it was winter, and I went outside with glass bottles, because back then it was this whole thing that you would take the bottles to get recycled in a shop. Don't ask. Growing up as a teenager in 1990s was a bit different. So yeah, you wouldn't have like recycling outside your house. You would actually take the bottles back to the shop, and then you would get like some kind of rebate for bringing the glass bottles. So anyways, it was winter, so I slipped on some ice and I broke the bottle with my left hand. So because of that, I do have some nerve damage in my ring fingers, so I can't fully control it, and therefore fretting with my left hand was just not going to be a thing. It just didn't come naturally, and plus I had a motor function disorder as well. And then after that, for a few years, I didn't pick it up at all. But then lefty guitars became more the norm, and I decided to try it with a lefty guitar, and it all just fell into place within 4 months. So I then started doing guitar gigs as well, electric guitar gigs, and I did perform with people like Rod Stewart. You can probably find that on the internet. We were on Piers Morgan Life Stories as his band. I also was, and again, being a session musician, we did a few gigs for X Factor, but every time we did X Factor, they always had like us session musicians in the shadows, like you could never see us, and they would make us like do makeup and everything, and you know, hair and all that, and then they would stick us in like shadows, and I'm like, well, that was pretty pointless. Like, what a waste of time. I could have just rolled out of bed. Just stood on the stage. But I was a part of the Andrew Lloyd Webber's Search for New Jesus back in, I don't know, 2014 was it? Maybe earlier, 2012. So I was one of the 4 guitarists. And it was pretty cool because 2 of us were lefties and the other 2 were normies. So the producers like totally flipped out. They can do like, oh my God, a mirror thing. Let's do 2 of you here and 2 of you there. So they were like, they had this perfect symmetry, and that was a fun gig. So yeah. And yeah, so that was my music career. Played with Emma Dakeman, well, no, actually, what does she call herself now? Edie. She was dating James Marsden for many years. So when she was first trying to do her music career in the UK, because she's British, I was a part of her band, so I was her saxophone player. So yeah, there have been a few people that you may know, and then a whole bunch of unknown bands that you wouldn't really know. So yeah, pretty high level, you know. But then I got tired of traveling. I got swine flu in 2009 and started to kind of like think to myself, what the hell am I doing? Because I got swine flu. It was like one of the first 1,000 people, because I was always tired. I wasn't taking care of myself particularly well, and so I suffered a lot. Like, you know, in the second week, the flus are supposed to get better. This one got worse, and you know, I would be like coughing my lungs out every time I tried to cough, and it was so painful. I literally thought I was going to die. So I was like, what am I doing? Like, just going around the world for like, and the fees started getting smaller and smaller. Now, you know, I love money. Like, who doesn't? You know, we are traders, and there's a love for your passion and, you know, your vocation. But then you come to a point in life where you're supposed to be progressing in your career, and I just kind of felt like it was going backwards, because, you know, it was after the credit crunch, and slowly the quality and the standard of gigs started declining, to the point where we went from having like business class flights when we were going to Asia to go like do, you know, Hong Kong gigs and stuff, to doing a Croatia gig where we didn't even have like a hotel. We like arrived, and it was a really long flight. And it was she's gonna rip this to pieces in 3 seconds. Yeah. Sorry, no more balls for my my 7 arrived, but this leotard was the one. Anyways, I'm being a bit random here. So yeah, I started thinking, you know, I'm making pretty decent money as a trader, and I was only trading my own cash at that point, because I started trading in 2007. And the Croatia gig was hilarious, because we arrived really late. That's the gig where I got swine flu. We arrived sort of in at like, they first of all, they put us on one of those cheapo flights that you went around the world to get to your actual desired location. We went via Turkey, so we went via Istanbul, and the whole flight was like 7.5 hours. So, and it was super early in the morning. Long layover in Istanbul. We finally get there, and they stick us in a van, and they go, all right, so now we have another 2.5 hours. And I was like, but where is the gig? Nobody wants to tell me where. It's like, oh, it's Pag Island. And I'm from that area. I'm from former Yugoslavia. We used to go to vacations there every single year. My dad had a house in a place called Zadar, and that was before the war, and then we lost it. But yeah, so another 2.5 hours. So we finally get there, and they take us straight to the club. So we're like, okay, well, we're starving. Like, can we get some kind of food or something? And they were like, food? Well, no, we didn't really plan for that. I mean, can you just, like, get on stage and, like, do your thing? Like, we're tired. We haven't slept for 48 hours. We're like, no food, no sleep, no nothing. So we did the gig, and I felt absolutely crushed. So after that, I'm like, okay, we're done. Finally, we can go to the hotel. And because I was the one speaking the language, the rest of them were like the DJ and the singers and the percussionists. They were English. And they were like, can you like talk to the driver? So I spoke to him, and I said, yeah, we're ready to kind of go back to a hotel. And he says, what hotel? Like, no, we need to go back to the airport. It's like, you are joking. And I said, just like, no way. Like, what are you doing? And after that, came back to London, felt really run down. And then on Wednesday, I had a gig in Pasha, London, that was still open back then. Through the third set, I kind of felt a bit off. But I thought to myself, I just pushed through it, you know, popped a couple of painkillers. And then I woke up in like the worst flu ever. That was the swine flu. So after that, I just decided that I needed to make my exit. And I focused all of my efforts into learning how to trade like properly. And, you know, I grew my then account size. And eventually, sort of 5 years into my trading career, I decided to make it into a profession and actually go into a prop firm, learn how to do intraday trading. So here we are 18 years later. And I've never really looked back. I mean, I do miss the performing part of it, but I don't miss all the stuff that went with the politics and the lack of hospitality and, just a whole bunch of other things. And backstabbing, let's face it. And then that industry is very ageist too. So as soon as I got to like 29, 30, suddenly gigs were nowhere near as plentiful because everybody wanted people who were up to 25. And you see what I look like? It didn't matter because they were like, well, you're old. And I'm like, I'm not even, like back then I wasn't even 30 yet, I was like, dude, really? So yeah, interesting industry for sure, but I'm happy to be out of it. Yarden says, sounds like a real nightmare gig. Yeah, it was probably one of the worst ones I've ever been to. The people who were organizing it, they were lovely. There was Lydia and I can't remember the guy's name, but he was pretty cool. Like he was originally from Bosnia, but every time he would speak to anyone from either Serbia or Croatia, he would like mold his dialect because it's all a very similar language. It's a version of the same thing. And he would suddenly start talking in that dialect, and I was like, what's going on there? So they were pretty cool. It wasn't their fault at all. It was the organizers of the entire like club and stuff. So yeah. Thomas Kane is like, Dee, can I ask you to close your live account? No, I still have my live account. I just don't, like during the summer, I like to focus on the regular trading hours. And I found that summertime tends to be really sketchy for the London session. Like it's a boring, nothing event. And then all I end up doing is just chopping myself up. So I've gone back into combines for certain parts of the day. If I feel that the day is not quite right, or I just want to get like my footing of what's going on, I would do like a few trades that maybe are not the best, but I get a feel for which side worked and how much drawdown that side experienced versus the other one. And then it gives me an idea whether I'm in a range bound day, so I need to kind of focus more on the extremes, or whether we do have some sort of a mean reversion in progress, or whether somebody keeps buying it as soon as we kind of pop slightly lower. So that's the reason for that. So you will see me flipping and flopping between live and combines as and when required, just to remove that risk to the live accounts. But yeah, so just to make things easier for myself, I have gone into a few combines that I'm kind of running just because, like, I can't get funded on them because I still have a live account. But they're a very good tool. Like, let's say that your day begins, and this is something that happens to me, especially during a range bound day, because I'm a mean reversion trader. So a lot of the times my eyes would just naturally gravitate towards the mean reversion setups. Whether it is a mean reversion or not, contrarian D is going to be a contrarian D. So I get myself into trouble sometimes that way. And with combines, I can sort of go, all right, so I've tried the mean reversion, did not happen. And therefore, I need to maybe be a little bit more objective. Then what I would typically do, I would have a big rest between now and the next session, so typically 2 hours. Sometimes I have a nap in between, just to kind of wipe my brain of whatever it was thinking before, to not carry it over into the next session. And then I still remember what London did or did not do, but now I'm kind of equipped with a little bit more awareness, situational awareness of what could happen, if that makes sense. And if that's happening to you, if you sit down and the first hour of your trading is just nearly always a car crash, and then you end up spending all the rest of the session trying to dig yourself out of a hole, going into a practice account, doing all of that in the practice account, and then switching to the one that matters to you, that could be an approach. So it's not that we're not going to make mistakes. We're going to make mistakes, okay? Nobody's perfect. The people who have 90% accuracy typically are people who are scalpers, and that's fine. It works for them. It doesn't work for me. I hate scalping. I can scalp. I just don't like it. And I think I certainly wouldn't look like this at 45. if I was a scalper for 18 years, I would be very stressed. I wouldn't have the inner peace that I have. And that kind of ties into Greg's question. Do you feel swing trading has been a benefit to your day trading? And how was sizing affected by your trading moving to the day trading scene? So swing trading for me is something that is the backbone of my entire analysis, and I think is the reason why I see certain setups that other intraday traders don't even consider. You know, most people who are intraday traders, they're like, look at a large time frame, 1 hour. And I'm like, that's not a large time frame. Like, not to burst your bubble or anything, but a large time frame is daily, weekly, monthly. And more often than not, they can actually offer clues. Let me just clear my throat. Yeah, so it more often than not offers clues about the general trend or a range that is not always obvious, right? So if I look at even a 4-hour chart on copper, it's like, what are we going to see? Are we going to see a range? Are we going to see an uptrend? Well, this was certainly a range, but there's a little bit of an upward skew. Do I think that this is all just buy, and buy? No, because it's very range bound and it goes through extended periods of doing very little. And then if you go to the daily chart, you will see that there's a lot of inside bars. That's not a clean uptrend. So to me, this means from that larger time frame that for intraday, both sides of the picture can be considered, longs and shorts. And that changes the way I look at intraday price action. So rather than going, oh, I'm not going to short it, I will short it. Why? Because it's not a committed strong uptrend with all just green candles through and through. It's like one is up, the other one's down, then a doji, then up, then down, then another up, and then another down, then another. It's kind of like changing directions every day. That tells me from a swing point of view that whilst there is an uptrend in force, it's not strong, and we can then take advantage of that intraday. So I feel that me coming from a swing background offers me a rather unique outlook to see some stuff that maybe you won't see. And then if you look at copper, if we go to the daily chart actually, somebody will be saying on an intraday time frame, it's up, right? It's up. Is it up? Because to me, this looks like a range. This looks very rectangular to me. It might be a reaccumulation, but it might also be a phase 3 distribution, and then we follow it with a massive smash downwards, which is what copper loves to do. So here we had uptrend, 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 tariffs, 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 uptrend, uptrend. Whoops, somebody blew out one of the institutions. We never got up there. Reverse, smash, 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 more smash, more smash, more smash, more. Oh, okay, we found some buyers. So yeah, distribution into liquidation, something you can see very, very well on the daily time frame, but it's not particularly obvious if you're staring at 1 hour, 30 minutes, or even worse, 5 minutes, 2 minutes. So, you know, I feel that the most rounded traders that I've ever met are the ones who have both sides of the story. They can very well analyze in a simple way. You don't have to like go super deep into the long time frame analysis. Like, is it up? Is it down? Is it sideways? And are we at any levels where we turned around previously? You know, 3 questions or 2 questions really. Direction, and are we at any important previous levels? The end. And then the rest of it, it can be intraday, because intraday does take a lot more skill, let's put it. And then the second part of Greg's question, how was sizing affected by your trading moving to the day trading scene? I've never had a problem with sizing. I know that these days you have people who are like, oh, only trade 3 minis. It's like, you have 4.5K to play with on a new account. So that means you will live through 3 trades before you blow out. So it's like, what was that thing that one of the guys that I saw on YouTube said? Pass or smash. It's like, is that what we're doing that? The pass or smash challenge. And I come from the following idea of a prop world, the old school. You get into a prop firm, they give you a simulator challenge that you first have to pass some tests, right? You have to actually prove that you know what a future is, and that you know some function of the futures markets. Like these days I have a series 3, but back then it was like just the sheer basics, and then they would teach you volume profile, because that was the big thing. And then they would give you a simulator challenge for 2 weeks, and then they would put you in a live account with a $225 loss limit. Can I just remind everyone that micros were not a thing back then? I think they existed from 2013, but they weren't available for most of the community, and nobody was trading them either. They only became popular in the last several years, right? 4 or 5 years. But yeah, technically they existed as a product, but there was no volume in them. Like there was no dedicated market makers. And for years I shied away from trading micros because of that. It was like you would look at the chart, it would look like a dead chart. It would literally look like an out of month contract, like with like lines and stuff. And it would sort of track the main price, but nah, it was like literally nothing. Spreads were like massive. There was like nothing between bid and ask. Just run. Oh, there's an order up there. So for years I didn't trade micros because of that. So imagine this: you get into a prop firm, you can only trade a mini with a $220 loss limit. So how many attempts do you think you're gonna have on $225 loss limit and a 1 mini? Go on, chat. Tell me. How many trades allowance do you think you're gonna have on a $225 loss limit? One? One? If that one works, yeah, maybe you get another one. Yeah. So that's the kind of mentality that I come from. You have 1 or 2 tries. You better make them a good one, right? And whilst I can trade more these days, and especially if I'm like trying to pass a challenge or something, I will do like 50 trades in a day. It's not a problem. It's the easiest thing in the world. But it's not going to be all on the same product. Like to me, doing 100 trades on the same product is just lunacy. I think quality over quantity is a good thing. So even when I'm trading more in order to pass a challenge, if I want to pass a challenge quickly, I will be doing maybe 5 to 10 trades per product. And then, yes, I will be doing a lot more scalping, but that's just like for 3 hours max, I will be going, okay, this is the setup now. And I'm very structured in my afternoon session because of the events that happen. They're basically easier to read. There's probabilistic things going on back then around that time, which doesn't really happen during London, especially not this early. You can find a setup in equities that banks on smashing through the Asia high or low and reverse. That's a very good setup. I do that on DAX. But for most of the other products, it's a little bit meh. Yeah. Yeah, exactly. So 1 or 2. Yeah. Yeah. Exactly. So one trade. Yeah, exactly. If that trade works, you then have a bit of a budget for the second one. But again, if you have 1 loss, you hit your $225 loss limit, and the day is over. It's quite sad. And yeah, that was like them putting shackles on you in a very simplistic way. It's like you have a tight risk limit. None of this micros nonsense that we have now. Better make it a good one. So I worked very hard to find the times of day when probabilistically my setups turn up. And I found that for energies markets, they basically turn up after 9 a.m. Central, that's 10 a.m. Eastern. After that sort of NY cut time, which is the Forex option expiry. So some instruments have a huge connection with Forex, especially commodities. And then I typically would look for reversals, specifically in crude oil or gasoline futures, or a continuation in cases where those markets, or copper or gold, for example, are in a trending market. But even now, gold tends to reverse after 9 a.m. Central, and especially into the euro close. So those are some of the times that are kind of important across the board, regardless of what you're trading. I mean, I don't know about corn and ags and stuff, but because I've never really traded that. But yeah, we can ask Hoop whether there's any notable reversals in corn. Mo says, D theoretically, could the prices of the NQ and mini and micro be wildly out? Only if one of them is not if one of them doesn't have enough sort of market making activities, then yeah. Would they be wildly out? These days probably not, because there's enough speculators on the retail side that brings that liquidity. So, every time you do 100 trades a day on M&Q and you are in a live account, let's say you have your own personal brokerage account, you are effectively a market maker, because you're making 100 transactions per day in the micros. You're making the market. So there's a interesting thing to think about. Obviously, there's big market makers in the minis, and that's a dedicated job, and arguably HFTs have taken over as that kind of a role. So you don't necessarily have to have humans, but anytime you have a market that has a lot of speculators, all of them, the more you trade, the more you're making the market. Whether you're making money for yourself, I would argue probably not in most cases, because most people who trade 100 trades a day largely have no idea what they're doing. Talking about retail side of things. And then the ones that come from institutional market making, even they have automated things by now. They wouldn't be sitting there being 60 years old and still clicking buttons to fill 3,000 contracts of volume a day. Yeah. Let's have a look. Do you remember your best trade? And if you do, can you elaborate on it? So, Dead Wolf, here's the thing. The way I trade, most of my trades look the same if they win. So, I don't go for YOLO, let's just see where this ends up, and I'm going to open up the profit target and let it run. Commodities are not like that. Maybe on some days, but commodities are very double-sided instruments. So if you do that, the likelihood is that you will never take profit, or you will end up with nothing, or break even, or it's very interesting how commodities can run it up in one direction, and then in one single move they just take all of your money. Crude oil longs being very well known by that. So let's have a look at crude oil on let's say a 30-minute chart, and you will understand why I say that. So even when crude oil is hey, we're in a long uptrend, yeah, look, this is amazing. Oh wow, I've been in on this, I'm gonna hold it until the end of time. And then you get the London Open, and then you get NYMEX, and it just, so let's say you were trading Asia, late Asia, so you go in here, get a pump, and you're like, I'm going to hold this with the order liquidated. This is going to be the best trade that I've ever done. And then London pushes it back up, causing your confidence to also soar, and going, yes, I am the wizard. I am God's gift to trading, man. And then NYMEX opens, reverses, smash. And then you come back and you go, where's my trade? Stop loss or break even or wherever you put it. Why? Because that's what crude oil does. It's ouch. So this is why I say I hate being long crude oil, because it's like equities. It a certain bias to the downside in crude oil's case. And every time I am long on crude oil, I always feel like somebody's going to pull the rug out from it underneath my feet, because I've seen this happen so many times. So if I'm short crude, I would maybe hold it a little bit longer. But most of my setups, unless we're coming from swing points on daily charts, will be about 2-hour multiples, maybe 3 if we have enough range and, you know, somehow I'm managing to maybe use a slightly smaller stop that would account for maybe 2.5, 3 hours. So my version of what was your best trade ever, there is literally no such thing. I've had trades where I've caught 500 ticks on copper in a day, and that's like, yeah, it's a good trade, but is it like something that I will remember? I do not connect my episodic memories with just another setup that worked out. Like my brain just doesn't work that way. Just doesn't work that way. To me, a win or a loss are not anything to elicit an emotional reaction. It's just a job, right? It's like you did a trade, you had a setup, you entered it, it worked. End of story. Like, cool story, bro, right? And by the same token, you had a hypo, you entered a trade, it didn't work. Also, cool story, bro. It's like, so my trades, you know, all of my, it's always going to be either a 70 tick profit target or a 105 tick profit target, or it's always going to be a 35 tick loss on something like copper or crude oil, or it's going to be a 70 tick loss on something like YM, but because it's smaller, it kind of adds up to the same amount of money. So it's like ballpark, if you're using one mini, it's going to be around 350 per trade. And then as the account grows, I basically grow with that. But to me, I look at everything in ticks. So I don't care whether I make like, you know, 20 grand on one trade or 200. It's still the same amount of ticks to me. It's just different account sizes, if that makes sense. The Invisible Trader says, what's the difference between live and combine if you can win, lose money on both? Well, one is live money, where I can take cash out. So if I do the losses on the live, that's eating into my actual real equity. And the combine is just a combine, where I can test my hypothesis and get a feel for the market without actually exposing myself to any risk. Does that not matter? Are we not risk managers? But what is the difference between live and combine? Another big difference. You have a daily loss limit in the live. How many of you forgot about that? So it's not quite the same, because in the live, under the 3K loss limit, I always feel like I'm starting a new combine every single day. And until you know, request bigger amounts because your account size gets to, you know, quite sizable cash of 6 figures, quite reasonable 6 figures, I just don't think I can trade the same way as I do in a combine, making use of the entire available balance, because it changes the equation. It's not the same equation, right? You have a daily loss limit. So even if you have 100 grand in there, unless you talk to the risk team and they deem you a safe trader that will never go on tilt, and they can trust you with all of that money, it's likely that you will have a daily loss limit. And, you know, I don't know too many people. I think a few have had 5K loss limit, and I think very few have had like 9K loss limit, which didn't work out well for them, because they tried sizing up, then they hit the 9 grand loss limit. So now instead of losing 3, now they've lost 3, 4, 5 days, and that turns into 90 grand in a week. So they, you know, the risk team has very bad experiences with people effectively being given a longer rope to hang themselves with, and that's why they still maintain that you have to have a daily loss limit. It makes things difficult, I will be honest. It's not the same as combine, because in a combine, you know, you rack up like, you know, 7 grand, or in an XFA, you know, there's no daily loss limit. I've racked up like 20 grand in an XFA, and then I was trading 2, 3, 4, 5 lots, racking up another 15K, because, you know, in May I took out 15 grand just from the accounts that I had, and then carried over like 20 grand into the live. So, you know, but it's not the same. It's not the same equation. I'm not sure that many people know that. How much of the adjustment it's necessary to actually go into an account where you have a data loss limit again. So it's a challenge, you know. Us as traders, we like challenges, so it's fine. But yeah, just keep that in mind when you're asking questions like, oh, what's the difference between a live and a combine if you can lose money in both? Combine is not real money. XFA, you know, you can take money out of it, but technically it's a performance-based bonus. It's not real money either. It's Topstep money, if we're going to be nitpicky. So yeah, I mean, do a demo account on AMP and then rack up a huge balance and go to AMP futures and go, hey, can you pay me my money from a demo account? They're going to be like, what have you been smoking? So yeah, just, you know, keep that in mind. But live accounts are actual live accounts with real money. So to me, but two very different things. I don't know why I'm even explaining this. Anyways, let's move on. Stephen Donlan says, so what would be your size on a 50k combine? 50k combine, I personally was going for 1 to 2 trades per day on a 1 mini. Would I recommend that for somebody who has not had success and who hasn't been able to get any payouts, or never gotten funded or never gotten a payout, keeps blowing out of XFAs? No. I would probably start on 3 micros maximum, and then just use it as proof of concept. How long can I last trading 3 micros? And thankfully now we have these limits, trade limits. I don't know whether you saw this. Look at the contract limits. I showed this last week, which is why the SMNQ limit is there. So you can basically not only put the symbol blocks, let's say you don't want to do NQ, so you block NQ, and then you go into symbol contract limits. So you lock it up so that if you're trading NQ, MNQ, on a 50k, 1 or 2 micros is all that you're going to need. If you want some flexibility to take some off, then trade 2. NQ is a very fast product. It's not the same as ES. It is a correlated product, but it's bonkers. It's like batshit crazy when it does move. But yeah, use these contract limits. And I would make it into a routine, especially if you struggle with tilt or whatever, to, at the very least, do trade limits. So you don't have to do personal data loss limit. But if you find yourself over trading, you can set the maximum number of trades per day and then go for quality over quantity. Go for 7. You know, that's not too restrictive, still allows you to make mistakes, but also makes you think that you only have a certain number of tries on the day. So it will make you rethink before you click the button. And also with Jerome, Dr. Jerome, he says before you enter a trade, breathe. So make that into a routine. So number 1, set your risk limits before the session starts. Lock them up for the day. So you save that. And then you go down here and you lock out the risk settings for the day. That's step 1. You do nothing else before you do that. And then you find a setup and you go, oh, that's a setup. Just go. Click. It will help you control yourself a lot more. Breath is a very powerful technique of controlling yourself. When your breath is shallow, it means you're likely on the verge of fight or flight response. And you don't want to be on the verge of fight or flight response. So yeah, my size on a 50k and somebody else's size, I know that people are like, oh yeah, but I would have traded the same way, you know, Dakota trades or you trade or whatever. We've been trading for so many years. Like, even when we're making mistakes, we know exactly where the mistakes are. And that's the difference, right? If you are constantly baffled by the market price action and you can't even explain yourself what the hell happened, that is a problem that I would tackle first. But, you know, even if I have like a day that's not great, A, I would stop before any major disasters. And B, I would just say, okay, well, today sucks. None of my setups are playing out. tried about 5 trades today, just can't really, not really in the zone, and then I walk away. But I would also go, it's a neutral day, we didn't really move much, the range is like 36 ticks, which is what happens in some of the quieter days. Did we have a failed auction? Yeah. Was it playable? No. Did we have a neutral day? Sort of. Was it playable? Also no. You know, I can explain to myself exactly what transpired on the day, so I'm not like, oh my god, what happened? What is that? Oh my god. And then fear and all of that crap that starts happening. So, you know, I don't get that. It's just like, whoopsie, okay. Or if there's a tape bomb or something, I never go, what was that? I always go, oh, that looks newsy. Okay. I mean, you've heard me say that. This looks newsy. Why? Because I've seen the headline risk candles that always look the same. They look like these extraordinarily massive moves. And I'm like, this has got to be news. And then I go to financial juice and I'm like, yeah, there it is. Okay, fair enough. And sometimes I'm on the right side of those. So the profit target just gets reached in a second. And in fact, to me, March, April, and May was so fun. Like, it was so fun to trade. Bring back tariffs. Just a joke, right? But, yeah, it's down to your confidence, right? So your sizing should reflect the proof of concept and how much confidence you have in your setups. How long can you actually last trading 3 micros? Not optimizing and over optimizing and then pulling yourself out of holes by sizing up, because that's over optimizing. Because now you're changing the size. Now you're changing the equations. It's like, nah. And when that goes wrong, you get a blown account. So you want to avoid that. Thomas Kane says, what would you say then that over summer you're placing the majority of your trades after 3 p.m.? Yeah, so I'm placing the majority of my trades between 3 p.m. and 6 p.m. UK time. And then I'm usually done for the day. That has worked pretty well for me. What is the difference in purpose of a Series 3 versus a Series 10? Series 10, I think it's securities, if I'm not mistaken, whereas Series 3 is futures and derivatives, options and stuff. What is the purpose of it? Well, for retail traders, nothing. If you are somebody who doesn't work for a company or a company that might be becoming a brokerage, wink, wink, or if... you know, maybe if you want to just increase your knowledge, you could read the books and do the tests for fun. But if you pass a Series 3, just know that from that point onwards, if you're getting data fees on TradingView for like $2, you have to declare yourself as a professional trader. And that's arm and a leg in fees for data fees because you're considered a professional. So yeah. Do you need it? I think it's good to read the book. Is it going to make you into a better trader? Probably not, but you will get a better understanding of the market mechanics and how the futures work, what the market makers do, why some of the hedging activities especially of market makers, cause some of the areas to be reversals. That's usually to do with the inventory adjustment because they have to be delta neutral, market neutral at all times. So you learn that there is actually a mechanistic nature of this market, and certain things just become less scary. And then you kind of learn the function of those markets, and you just become a bit more of a rounded trader. You know, would you want to go to a doctor who kind of doesn't really know anything about other parts of the body, but they just kind of know how to slice and dice, and yet they don't really have a good understanding of how that part of the body works? So I know what my answer to that would be. So yeah, and then if you want to maybe create some passive income or something, maybe you want to become an introducing broker, you know, an IB for a brokerage. And yeah, you know, there are uses, but Series 3, I think that's securities, but correct me if I'm wrong. Um, the amygdala will throw a haymaker. Yes. Duncan says, good morning in the US. Good morning from Surrey, countryside in England. Yarden says, I'm on a 50k combine. My max size is 2 MES or 1 MGC, and I still think it's so expensive for 2,000 loss limit. I agree. Let me just let one of the dogs out because he's... Are you a bit... What's going on, Crichton? What's up? You want out? Come on. Out you go. Go. Yeah, Crichton doesn't really like being in the office for too long. He starts getting really upset. And then he's like, man, let me out. Man. It's very cute. Yeah, so... trading, Nickel says, I've calmed down my trading so much now. I need to work on applying neuroplasticity to my life. Yeah, I think applying neuroplasticity in your life is actually a beautiful thing. Difficult, for sure. Stopping yourself in a challenging situation being one of the more difficult ones that I've struggled with. But yeah. MR Bloggy says, how much should you make with a 100k combine? The target that is designated for that combine, which is 6k, I believe. Look, guys, making more than the designated target in a combine serves zero purpose but to make your job more difficult if you are flexing your ego, making like... We've had this during the last VIP coaching season where I had like 3 or 4 people who were consistently oversizing in a combine, and I'm like, do you think you're gonna get a trophy for making 15k in one day, and now you need to make like, you know, 100, 200, 500 times more as a target? Nobody's gonna pat you on the back if you're oversizing in a combine and overshooting the target. There is no flex in that. To me, that's just like the stupidest thing you can do. So just stick to the target, you know, make maximum 3k in one day and then do the same for the next day if you want to rush it. But I wouldn't rush it. I would use the combine for a proof of concept that will then serve you as proof of concept. How long can you last and not blow out of the same XFA in the future where there's no resets? That's what the combines are for. They're not there to full port it unless you've been trading for many years. You're an advanced trader. Do what you like in that case. Okay? I pass challenges in 1 or 2 days. Like, if I want to pass a challenge, it's not a problem. But, you know, trading sustainably is a different case. You know, I have people coming to me all the time going, oh, I have a great strategy, but I'm always blowing out of my XFA. But then that's not a great strategy, is it? Only in trading world you hear that. Hey, the strategy is great, but I do blow out. So how is that a great strategy? It's not. Like, it's got some parts that are not working properly. 5 pandas going, who let the dogs out? Who? We sing that all the time in here, and it's awesome. Yeah. All right, Platinum. So, Smooth AF says, D, can you go over your setup and strategy that you're looking for in Platinum? So it's the same strategy that I use for everything else. It's just it's a little more directional. So rather than looking for maybe reversals or something, I will be looking for points that might bring me a further move in the same direction in Platinum. So that could be VWAP. It could be the outer edge of value. Or it could be my quantitative extremes, ADR, ASR. But if you're in a directional move in Platinum, don't try reversals. It ain't working, right? So if it keeps shooting up in a single direction and you're going, oh, it's coming up to the ADR high. Platinum, very likely on that day, it's an outlier day, and it's not going to be, it ain't stopping, man. Or it might stop partially and then sell off a bit and then just kind of keep going. But generally, I want to be long on Platinum. So this sell-off from Friday might help that situation. I'm kind of a bit careful when I'm getting involved with platinum, because I want to find a very, very good area. And to me, this is still not that great of an area, right? So I would probably look for us to retest 1400s and then sort of maybe snipe it from there someday. Is it going to be an everyday trade? No. I trade platinum about twice a week. So it's not something I look at every day. I think on some days it's very quiet. So you're like expecting some big move, and then you're like, oh, great, it's moved 20 ticks in the last 3 hours. Wonderful. Because I don't sit there and watch my swing intraday trades. If it's a swing intraday trade, I will obviously kick it off and then go do something else. Then come back every sort of half an hour to an hour to check on it, so I don't actively check it. But, you know, it has happened that I enter a trade and, you know, I look at it after half an hour. It's like, okay, still no movement. Come back after another half an hour. Okay, looks a bit quiet. Let's wait for COMEX. COMEX opens, moves 10 ticks. And you're like, okay, this ain't the day, but I'm going to give it some chance. And then 3 hours later, I'm like, okay, this is not going anywhere. Time to close. But if it's a range bound day, or if it's a day with a lot of movement, then I will typically trade more. However, I will choose things like copper. I will choose things like natural gas. So I do typically do about 2 or 3 trades on natural gas in a day. But yeah, platinum, I want to be long with the trend once we fall to some significant areas of demand on slightly larger time frames, or if an intraday setup appears from, let's say, value high, outer value high, so we're coming from some kind of a gap close, then sniping it back up. Or if we get to, you know, maybe one of the GEX levels that also have some confluence there, but not too much confluence. You don't want anything to look too perfect. If you got like a million confluences there, it's likely that it's going to be a range, because it's like, why would you have so many confluences in the same area? It's like, we have VWAP, we have a moving average, we have the value area, we have I don't know, daily fixed range, you know, and suddenly you're like, there's too many confluences. This is not good. Over-optimizing also works. Also doesn't work for walk forward testing. Greg is asking, is RBOB the same movement tendency as crude? So it follows the same patterns, but it's faster. So if crude oil is range bound, very likely that RBOB is going to be range bound as well. But if crude oil is moving one way, it's very likely that RBOB might be moving at like 4 times the speed in the same direction and much cleaner. Maybe with a bit more wicks, because it's like the NQ of the energy markets. But yeah, recently I've been trading a lot of natural gas, because I kind of bounce between different products depending on which ones I find the easiest intraday. And if I feel that if it starts to feel like pulling teeth or pulling blood out of a stone, I will put that product on the side and go to something else. And that's something that I've done for many years now. So yeah, my strategy for platinum longs, if we can get good pullbacks, looking for more kind of star setups after significant pullbacks. So right now, I'm not seeing anything. Platinum for me at the moment, not that interesting. If we get down to 1400, that could be a choice. Maybe 1450 if the time of day also matches, because I have the London average session range low exhaustion there. We also have a bit of a gap on the volume profile, right from like 1453 down to 1443. That's a 4 weeks worth of the volume profile. But yeah, now I'm kind of thinking this is all pretty quiet. There was a question on GC that I think I missed. So something about GC moving at like 7 EST, so I missed it. No, okay, that was in chat. Yeah, so let me see if I can find that. that chat. It was earlier though. Oh man. So GC. Oh yeah, here we go. Greg, I've noticed that GC gets directional around 7 a.m. EST. Is it more or less true to the London Open outcry pit towards the NYMEX pit times? I would say that the overlap, I call it the overlap. But yes, it does line up with the LME sort of start, because at 6:40 a.m. Eastern, you have the LME that starts trading, and then, you know, you can find some really good directions. And in fact, if you look at like this combine, it's so funny. It's like, I wish we had like our analytics on, oh no, it changed now. So it was saying to me, Coach T was saying to me, your times, best times here, your best times are between 12 p.m. and 4 p.m. That's basically the overlap and the LME open. Stick to those. And I was like, yeah, tell me something I don't know, Coach T. So yeah, it's always the same thing. When I'm trading after the LME open, it tends to be a smoother trade, and that's when you get like a lot more movement. So yeah. Desmond says, D, what are the GEX levels for GC? Let's do it. Let's do it. Make this bigger. So, starting with the gamma wall and put supports. So we have gamma wall at 3390 today. So gamma wall can sometimes be an extreme, but just beware of tape bombs, because if there's any more talk about Trump firing Powell, then this won't matter at all. Then you have a minor GEX 5 level underneath that at 3385. I wouldn't take too much notice of that. GEX 2 is coming up at 3375. Now, interestingly, last week 3375 was a gamma wall, I believe. It was definitely a gamma wall on one of the days, so it could be an important level. Still carries a lot of interest, but it just depends how they behave. Right now, they're having a bit of trouble. Are they sustaining below it? Not just yet. So I wouldn't say, oh yeah, GEX 2 definitely is being resistant. Not yet. It's having trouble, but gold is gold. We've been in a pretty fierce uptrend. So I wouldn't, you know, I would be more kind of looking towards buying from gamma levels than selling from them, unless everything lines up. You know, you have time of day, you're coming close to settlement. You know, everything is kind of being put into a really nice sort of puzzle piece. And then you also happen to have a GEX level that's struggling. Yes, but this time of the day, anything can happen. LME is not open, COMEX is not trading yet, so, you know, it's a long day ahead. But yeah, GEX 2 could be a level of interest. And even if we go higher, 3375 zone, so it's nothing is ever one singular price point, it's a zone. That could be supportive if we go over it and then retest it. So keep that in mind as well. Then we have a whole bunch of stuff between 3355 and 3340. So I would say if we get to 3355, you might be in a situation that there's chop there, because whenever you have too many GEX levels next to each other, that rarely leads to a smooth price action, and it usually means there could be a range there. It's not like a neutral day type where you have a very well defined session ranges. You can't like predict that it's exactly going to stay there, But if it gets stuck in that range, you might want to go into the scalper mode and just go, right, this is so literally 340, 345, 350, 355. All like literally 5 points difference, and that gets annoying very quickly. I don't like seeing that. Whenever I see that, it's always like, okay, well, maybe I'm not going to be looking for momentum trades in and around that area. So this is how ugly that looks. So we have KX3, then we have KX1, then we have the high volume level, which is usually reactive on the first try, and then you have the put support. So all of these are pretty strong levels, right? So which one might cause a stopping point? I don't know. But this is where I sometimes like to combine it with my quantitative extremes. I have a quantitative extreme, ADR low, around 33.41 today. So really it stands to reason that maybe once we get here, there will be chop, but ultimately we could expect to see 33.40. It's on the cards for the day's range. Remember, that's just a statistical probability. It's like this is how much we moved to the downside over the last 10 to 40 days, depending on the measure. But I've actually expanded my ADR measures to 40 because we had some outlier days, then we had some required days, then we had some big days. So to smooth all of that out, I've actually increased my Bloodtick DR indicator to show me 40 days. All right, I think that's it for today. So I couldn't really see anything moving. Everything started off a little bit meh today. So let's see what the day brings, guys. We had some amazing questions today, so thank you for those. Thank you for spending time with me. I really appreciate it. Can you look at YM? I mean, I can look at YM, but it's... It was tracking ES pretty closely. So let's put ES side by side. Only in a slightly more exaggerated fashion. Alright, so what do we got here? Yeah, so to me that's very similar price action, right? If I try and line it up, make these a bit fatter. Yeah, I don't see much difference except ES is going into an attempt at another run at all-time highs, whereas YM sort of lagging today. So it's actually looking weaker for now than ES for this particular session. Whether that stays, I don't know, but I think I did like a couple, you see that these from Friday, so I did do a couple of decent trades on YM on Friday, but yeah, ES was not being that great, like it was quiet, and yet YM gave me some pretty smooth moves, and it came from ADR low, so it was in and around, this is a 4-hour chart, so it was somewhere around this candle. We had the ADR low, and then I kind of, was it this one? I can't remember now. No, it was this one. Sorry. Let me go into the 30-minute chart. Maybe it'll be better. So I had, where was this? Hold on. Here we go. Okay, so this was the euro close. Managed to avoid this whipsaw, but then the London ASR low, bizarrely, was the place where they decided to turn it around. I think the ADR low was all the way down here, if I remember correctly. But yeah, to me it's tracking ES very closely, with ES being a bit stronger today. So I don't think that a different analysis is warranted there. I mean, look at them. Down, down, down. Pin Bari type candle, follow through upside. Doji, small bear. Long, green candle with tiny selling wick. They're literally like tracking each other very, very closely. So yeah, ES, track ES as a benchmark. Use YM to trade a slightly more exaggerated movement because it's got more range. That's kind of how I do RBOB and CL. I will sort of back my analysis with the CL levels, but then I will just do the same thing on RBOB without looking at its levels necessarily, because they will be exaggerated. Yeah, XFA Topstep pays you for research. Yeah, exactly. You get payouts. That's what it is. You do R&D, and you get paid for it. S&P playbook. Okay, so S&P playbook. Yeah, to finish up on that, I'm very familiar with the S&P setups. Just be careful because they do look for stocks in play, single stocks in play. They don't necessarily trade indices. Okay? And when you have a stock in play, those momentum plays that they have, like, oh yeah, you go over one minute EMA and then you cross over VWAP and 9 EMA. That will only work for stocks in play, right? When you have a stock in play, it means there's something, some news is pushing it in a particular direction. That's very different from an index, okay? So I've seen people trying to apply those same principles even on commodities, and they just fall flat on their face because it's not the same product. So yeah, just caution. It is useful, so do read through them. But bear in mind that the products that they're talking about in those playbooks are single stocks in play. That's how S&P does stuff, okay? Anyways, I'm going to finish it up here and wait for some better action, guys. This is like watching paint dry. So I'm going to be spending some time outside. Hopefully it's not raining, and if it is, great. My grass will be very green. We've been having a bit of threat of a drought over here, so I'm actually very glad to see some rain finally. But we still had a beautiful walk last night with the dogs, all the dogs. So yeah, happy Monday. I'm going to wish you a good trading week. Thank you for spending time with me. I appreciate it. I will see you again tomorrow. And in the meantime, start the Monday slow. Use a bit of critical thinking from the large time frames. Don't obsess too much over it. Usually large time frames are pretty clean and they're pretty clear in what they're trying to achieve. It's either up, down, or sideways. Note down some of the previous week's high, previous week's low. Use the Topstep levels for that. Those are levels that will frequently be revisited by the big institutions, hedge funds, even during the summertime. So they're very good areas to basically just put some pointers just to have some orientation of what is actually going on the day. And then obviously I have some slightly more fancy ways of doing it. But ultimately, that is the point, to have orientation in order to come up with situational awareness. I'm going to leave you with that. This has been the Euro Trade on TopstepTV. I'm Marcus Talker D. I will see you again tomorrow. Take care.